Welcome back to Monitors Unboxed. Today we're looking at a pretty interesting gaming monitor, the Titan Army P2510S, which is the first 24.5-inch 1440p 240Hz gaming monitor that I'm aware of. I've received a lot of emails over the years complaining about the lack of 1440p options smaller than 27 inches, so I think that audience will be very happy to learn of the existence of the P2510S. Aside from the size, this monitor is also interesting because of its price. At just $260 US, this is one of the cheapest 1440p 240Hz IPS LCD options on the market, coming in around $40 below models we've recommended previously, like the LG 27GR83Q. Could this be the perfect choice for competitive gamers wanting something higher resolution than the usual 1080p panels, but still at a compact size? Well, let's find out, but before we do, today's video is sponsored by the brand new Ugreen and Genshin Impact series. I was sent over the Kenichi themed fast charging adventure kit the other day, and honestly, these items look awesome. There's a super fast charging 20,000 mAh Nexode power bank with this really cool limited edition Kenichi artwork on the front, a HAL themed boot animation, 100 watt single port and 130 watt dual port output, and there's also a sweet 100 watt green braided cable with an HAL cable tie. The Genshin Impact series also includes a 65 watt 3-port fast charger, again with this awesome artwork on it, and a portable Qi 2 wireless charger sporting 15 watts of fast charging and a neat folding design. I love the way these Ugreen and Genshin Impact devices look and perform, so check out the links in the description for up to 30% off and to enter Ugreen's massive giveaway. Things get off to a rough start when assessing the design. I was surprised how cheap the P2510S looks and feels when I first took it out of the box. This monitor has bargain basement build quality, with the outer surfaces almost entirely being constructed of the most basic black plastic. It doesn't necessarily look bad in terms of its style, but the quality of materials is low and the build, with its various seams and grooves, is definitely entry level. By far the worst part of the design is the stand. Most monitor stands include some sort of metal, which adds weight to the base and improves rigidity. This metal is then shrouded in plastic on most monitors, or occasionally the stand simply is metal on some premium monitors. The P2510S's stand base is literally just plastic. It's very light, no metal inside, and it looks pretty crappy. To make matters worse, the stand pillar is extremely basic and is fixed height, no swivel or pivot adjustability either. It can tilt, but that's about it, meaning for most standard desk setups, it sits very low and will either require an additional shelf to sit on or a third-party monitor arm. These days, we usually only see fixed height stands on the absolute lowest end monitors, and that's the vibe I'm getting here, a low end design. So it's safe to say I'm unimpressed with the design and build quality. The stand is too short and wobbles a lot under slight knocks, it has little to no ergonomic adjustability, and the quality of materials used is poor. The quality of this monitor rests almost entirely on how good the screen itself is. The port selection is very basic, just two DisplayPort 1.4 ports and two HDMI 2.0 ports, plus an audio jack. No USB here at all. The HDMI ports do not have enough bandwidth for 1440p 240Hz, so are limited to 144Hz. Really, these should be HDMI 2.1 to allow for the full 240Hz, so you'll need to use DisplayPort to access the highest refresh rate. The OSD is not controlled through a directional toggle, instead using face buttons, which is another signature low-end monitor move. This makes the OSD difficult and slow to navigate. However, I was pleased to see a good feature set, including a lot of gaming stuff we often see on other monitors like crosshairs and FPS readout, timers, and shadow boosting. There's also a pretty good range of color controls, similar to most other monitors on the market. Let's move into talking about response time performance. The P2510S offers 5 overdrive options, though they're hidden away under the Picture Enhancement submenu. The first and default option is off, which gives us a look at native panel performance. At 240Hz, I recorded a 9.75 millisecond average response, which isn't fast enough for gaming at this refresh rate. Level 1 overdrive isn't fast enough either, lowering the response time to just 8 milliseconds. Level 2 is where things become quite acceptable, with a 4.74 millisecond average response time, good cumulative deviation under 400, and overshoot that isn't very visible while gaming. This is the mode that I'd recommend for 240Hz. The higher modes, so level 3 and top speed, just push the monitor too far and introduce obvious artifacts like inverse ghosting. What was great to see is the inclusion of variable overdrive, so when using level 2 for example, performance is managed and dialed back a bit for lower refresh rates, ensuring a playable experience across all refresh rates. Great news for variable refresh rate gaming. Now, some of the time overshoot was a little high for my liking using level 2 overdrive, but as we move down to 185Hz, it really isn't that bad and image quality holds up. Occasionally, you might see some faint inverse ghosting using this setting, which is mitigated by dropping down to level 1 overdrive. However, in my opinion, you can safely set and forget level 2 overdrive and enjoy fast performance at 240Hz, decent performance across the refresh rate range, and a single overdrive mode experience. Compared to other monitors, the P2510S performs well at 240Hz. An average response of 4.74 milliseconds puts it right in the ballpark of other modern IPS LCDs, very similar to the Gigabyte M27QX and faster than options like the MSI G274QPX. On average across the refresh rate range, it also performs well, actually finishing near the top of this chart, though with higher than typical overshoot using the level 2 overdrive setting. This is a similar result to the LG 27GR83Q, slightly faster response times, a bit more overshoot. So competitively, this monitor is stacking up really well for motion. Average cumulative deviation is also a win for the Titan Army P2510S, as variable overdrive gives it a small edge over some of its competitors. For example, it's 16% better in this metric than the MSI G274QPX, and offers basically the same experience on average to the LG 27GR83Q. The whiplash between talking about the build quality and response time performance is pretty severe with this monitor because, based on the build, you would think its response time optimization would be poor, but it's actually the opposite. Titan Army are extracting the most out of this IPS LCD panel. The P2510S also performs well at lower refresh rates like 120Hz, so this isn't just an option for competitive gamers after something 240Hz. At a fixed 60Hz, it's an average product, definitely not the optimal refresh for a 240Hz display. Input lag is great, offering a 0.3 millisecond processing delay and overall responsive experience thanks to its high 240Hz refresh rate. This is basically the same experience you'll get on other 240Hz IPS LCDs with no issues to speak of. Power consumption is typical, though not overly different to 27-inch options, despite having 18% less screen area. LCDs these days are quite efficient and shouldn't be a burden on your power bill. The P2510S is a wide gamut monitor with 94% DCI-P3 coverage, so that's pretty standard for today's gaming IPS panels. This gives it 71% coverage of Rec 2020 on the lower end of the scale and just barely meeting the requirements for HDR, if this was an HDR-capable product, which it isn't. The better IPS LCDs get up around 75% and then stuff with quantum dots over 80%. Like with response time tuning, I was quite impressed with the factory calibration of this display. Often we see some really wonky stuff with entry-level products, but that's not the case here. The color temperature and gamma are both really solid, leading to a decent delta E average. The color gamut is left unclamped by default for SDR use, so there is oversaturation in the color tests, but again, this is normal for gaming monitors. This leads to a mid-table result when comparing this Titan Army monitor to other similar LCDs. Here are the results with Windows 11 Auto Color Management enabled, which is a setting that applies OS-level color management on wide gamut displays, emulating the correct SDR color space in apps that only use sRGB, for example. We see little change to grayscale as expected, but much better results in saturation and color checker, now with Delta E ITP averages below 5.0. This is a great position to be in, and is the result of good factory calibration for the gamut of the monitor. There's also a built-in sRGB mode, which does not lock settings, so that's good to see. However, I found out of the box that this mode is not quite as accurate as using the default mode with Windows ACM, though it still does an okay job of emulating sRGB and remains a good choice for inputs that don't support color management. Relative to other gaming monitors, again, we see mid-table results for the P2510S. From here, we can improve performance through a full calibration, and there's multiple ways you can go. I achieved small gains through tweaking either the default mode with ACM enabled or the sRGB mode, given it has unlocked settings. But the best way, of course, is to pair that with an ICC profile, and I used CalMan to create one. The results are very solid. Peak brightness is on the lower end for a modern LCD, topping out at just 370 nits, though of course this is much better than today's OLEDs. I think this should be more than enough for most gamers. Minimum brightness is 31 nits, so there's a good range on offer here. The native contrast ratio of this panel is on the better end for an IPS LCD, though still within the usual range of an IPS. At 1362:1, it's a bit better than the LG 27GR83Q and a bit behind the MSI G274QPX. It's great when not getting a number below 1000:1, which is very poor in 2025, but it's still not really in the same ballpark as other display technologies like VA LCD. Contrast remains a weakness to IPS LCD tech in general, and black levels are not very good. Viewing angles are basically the same as other IPS LCDs, so this shouldn't be an issue for desktop gamers. It's got good viewing angles. Uniformity though was pretty lackluster with my unit and was a noticeable problem, especially along the left and right edges relative to the center. This can create a bit of a vignette effect, which I feel is more noticeable on a smaller panel like this, where more of the screen fits within your optimal central field of view. There can be panel variance with uniformity, but it's something to be aware of with this monitor. Final section of this review is the Hub Essentials checklist. Sometimes budget-friendly monitor brands enjoy lying on their spec sheet, but this isn't the case with the Titan Army. There's the usual misleading response time numbers, but outside of that, my only real complaint is advertising HDR10 support, which it does have. It can accept an HDR signal input. It's just the monitor has no real HDR hardware capabilities, no local dimming, enhanced brightness, or contrast. However, the HDR capabilities are not prominently advertised, so this isn't a huge issue. As for the feature support matrix, as a budget-oriented product, there are quite a few misses here. Some of these things are not very important. For example, not having USB ports or backlight strobing isn't a deal breaker. The lack of a height-adjustable stand or directional OSD toggle, though, is quite annoying, and there's nothing special about the contrast performance, for example. The Titan Army P2510S is a very surprising monitor in a number of ways, both good and bad. It's always interesting checking out brands I've never tested before, especially when you're producing unique products like this one. You just don't come across 24.5-inch 1440p monitors very often, so for the fans of smaller displays, I think this could be a hit. The quality of this monitor swings wildly between different areas. I was really disappointed with the build quality, which is bad in my opinion. The stand is terrible and lacks height adjustment. The OSD is hard to navigate due to its face button control. The whole thing, it just feels cheap and crappy. But then the performance tuning, in terms of response times and color accuracy, is pretty good, better than I expected from an entry-level monitor that delivered a poor first impression taking it out of the box. Titan Army have integrated variable overdrive, so motion performance is great at 240Hz, and we're getting a single overdrive mode experience. The P2510S performs very similarly to other 240Hz LCDs I've tested, no glaring flaws, and honestly, it's a great monitor for gaming. The 24.5-inch size will be divisive. I personally prefer a larger size, but this is a popular format for esports gamers in particular. Normally, you're forced into a 1080p resolution if you want something this size, so this 1440p option is a great upgrade and you're not sacrificing refresh rate or response time speed to do so. I'm not a huge esports gamer, so I'm not the best person to ask about whether 1080p or 1440p is better for competitive shooters, but what I can say is this monitor is sharper and clearer than the usual 1080p esports displays and is more versatile for a wide variety of gaming. There's also been attention paid to color accuracy and factory calibration. This display has a great color temperature out of the box, and it works very well with Windows 11 auto color management to deliver accurate colors. Monitors at the cheaper end of the scale are usually very inconsistent with color quality, but that's not the case here. It's tuned quite well, and this helps to deliver great overall panel quality. Outside of uniformity and maybe the contrast ratio as well, which are the biggest weaknesses to image quality. $260 US is a good price for this display in my opinion, as it serves a dual purpose. If you want a smaller 1440p monitor, this is a really competitive position because you aren't getting robbed. It's cheaper than 27-inch options for a smaller screen, which makes sense. It's also simply one of the cheapest 1440p 240Hz monitors on the market, so if you want that specification, you aren't as concerned about panel size, you're saving at least $40 US compared to most other products we've tested, like the LG 27GR83Q, and in terms of panel performance, it holds up really well. On the other hand, I feel like Titan Army have missed a trick when it comes to build quality. Could this display have been much better with just an extra $20 thrown on the design, maybe an upgrade in the plastic housing and a better height adjustable stand? I think it could have been, and that would make it much more appealing while retaining a strong value proposition. In chasing a super low price point, I think they've cut too far into the build quality. For just 15% more, you can get the LG 27G83Q or the Gigabyte M27QX, which have similar performance, but far nicer build quality, better ergonomics, and a larger panel, if that's what you want. So personally, I would still recommend most people grab the LG 27G83Q. I think that's the better 1440p 240Hz IPS LCD in this price range, but if you specifically want something smaller and aren't overly concerned about the build quality, the Titan Army P2510S does offer something unique that is worth considering, in my opinion. So anyway, that's it for this review of the Titan Army P2510S. Always enjoy checking out these sort of new formats and things we haven't really seen before on the channel. So hopefully all of those people that keep emailing me about smaller 1440p options, there's now at least one option for you. Would be great if there was more competition, more options for people. Not overly sure how popular this screen size and format is, but we'll see. Hopefully there'll be a few more options available for buyers in the not too distant future. Anyway, that's it for this one. If you want to support Monitors Unboxed and the independent testing that we do right here on the channel, then consider signing up and supporting us via our Patreon account. Links to that is in the description below. If you sign up, you get access to some pretty cool things. We've got a monthly live stream, we've got BTS content, Discord community, great place to chat about monitors, ask questions. We've got ICC profiles for all the monitors that we test, all that sort of thing. So thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.